I never really had any speech therapy per se. Overcoming stuttering was something that by the time I was about 26 or 27, it was no longer an issue in my life because I really understood a lot more about the things that contributed to that problem. I grew up afraid. I was identified very early as a high IQ kid. I was very smart. And I was also highly sensitive. And that combination made me vulnerable. I can't talk today. Vulnerable to a lot of things.
You mean that you are an empath? You know, like people's feelings and living them as your own?
Oh,
is it this kind of ability?
I always was that way. I still am. I'm very empathic. It's very easy for me to feel other people's problems and emotions and excitement and everything else. I just pick up a lot of this stuff. And
and do you think this contributed to you developing stuttering at the age of, was it 3 or 4?
I'm going to suggest that we do not use the word stuttering.
Okay. How shall we call it?
Let's call it holding back.
Holding back. Okay, holding back.
And the way I describe the problem, I said, and actually do this with me. Hold your hands like this. Okay. Now I want you to pull your right hand to the right. Pull your right hand to the right and pull the left hand to the left. When you find, when these forces pull in equal strength so that you can't move forward, move one way or another, that is a definition of a block.
Okay, yeah, true.
Two forces of equal strength pulling you in opposite directions. And you can get rid of the block in several ways. You can choose not to pull either to the right or to the left, in which case you can
just
move.
let go.
Yeah. Or you can choose not to hook your hands together totally. But normally people wouldn't say, well, I have a block with my hands, because you can see what you're doing. You can see that you can either do this or you can do that.
So are you saying that the people who started, they have a choice to just let go and not push anymore? And how do you actually let go? How do we allow ourselves?
They had a choice in the beginning when they were not conscious of what they were doing. In other words, if you're sensitive, and if you have feelings, and if you're not comfortable with the feelings, when the feelings come up and you need to express yourself, there is a tendency to hold back. And that's why I keep saying, do not talk about the fact that you wanted to stutter. talk about the fact that you wanted to hold back.
Hold back. Mm-hmm.
So when the impulse to hold back is as strong as the impulse to speak, then you have two forces of equal strength pulling in opposite directions, and you have a speech block. At the heart of it,
Mm-hmm.
it's obviously a lot more complicated than that, but at the heart of it, that's what the problem is. It is not a speech problem per se.
Mm-hmm. So, how would you like? So, if it's not a speech problem, then would you say that it's a problem of feelings and emotions, or is it some
It's
kind
a
of a?
problem of feelings and emotions that also involve speech.
Mm-hmm.
It's a total system problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get people to think of in total systems. They want to say it's a this problem, or it's a
Yeah.
that problem, or it's a that problem over there. And if I could just do that, I could fix it. It is a total system problem. I make analogies. Oh, there are all kinds of analogies. I had a very good analogy having to do with golf.
Mm-hmm.
I played golf when I was younger. I wasn't particularly good, but I wasn't bad. I was a, low 90s, high 80s golfer, mostly low 90s. And but on the golf course that I played in at home, on one of the courses, there was a pond, a little pond on the right. And I always ended up getting freaked out by the fact that there's water over there. Oh my God, I don't want to put the ball in the water. And so my challenge was to be able to stand and swing freely without pulling the ball to the left. And usually that was very difficult for me to do, because in order to swing through, I had to trust that if I swung the club in the way that I knew I had to swing it, the proper golf swing, if I swung it. And especially if I followed through, because the follow through is very important. By the way, I have a postnasal drip, and my voice is kind of hoarse, so
It's
bear with
okay, not you worry.
So if I could relax and just swing through and follow through the way you're supposed to with a golf swing, I could hit the ball straight.
That's it. So is it like kind of being spontaneous? Do you think speaking and playing golf? Is it, the question of being spontaneous? When you are spontaneous, then you're fluent, or how does it work?
Well, you have to be able, and this is the key part, you have to be able to trust your spontaneity.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was there swinging through and I was worried about pulling about hitting the ball in the water, it was very hard for me not to pull the ball to the left.
Yeah.
The last moment, because I didn't want to lose the golf ball in the drink. I just didn't.
Yeah, and this is the problem when we always tend to get what we don't want. So when people don't want to stutter, they stutter even more. That's the paradox. Okay, John, and how do we begin to learn to trust our spontaneity? Where do we begin? Because people often ask me, okay, I don't know where to begin. Can you give me some tools? Can you give me some techniques? I say, well, there is no magic pill. You have to start from within yourself.
Yeah, well, one of the things you need to do is to find a place where you can speak and relax and let go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where things like Toastmasters, speaking groups, any place where you don't have to perform.
Mm-hmm. And you don't have to be perfect, I guess.
Well, well, when I say perform, I mean perform according to what in your mind
All right. Mm-hmm.
says you have to be. In other words, if I go to a Toastmaster meeting, actually, let me change this a little bit. One of the things I ended up doing for about 15 years in San Francisco was running public speaking workshops for the general public.
And how did it go for you? Because people who started, they believe that
very well.
If you're fluent, you have no problem. You are happy. Is that true?
Well,
do you people who don't start it, do they ever get nervous?
you really bought into the whole program, I have to say. Public speaking has been described as the number one fear that people have, not just people who stutter, people in general. And the biggest challenge that you have to deal with in public speaking is allowing yourself to let go.
Mm.
And so the workshops that I ran, and the workshops were run for the general public. They weren't run for people who stutter. They were run for the general public. I would do all kinds of things. I would have all kinds of exercises designed to focus on the fact that speaking is easy when you make it fun.
That's it.
So I would get somebody who would stand up in front of the group and they would kind of carve out a 1.5 foot box, and they would put themselves into it like that. And they wouldn't move their arms and they wouldn't move their legs, and they'd be afraid to move at all. And they just try and get through the talk. I said, hey guys, this is a public speaking class. The idea is to have fun. Here's what I did with people. I would get somebody who didn't want to move. I would say, I want you to make a 3-minute talk. And when you talk, I want you to walk around the room to every place that you can stand. I want you to lean against every wall that you come up against. I want you to touch everything that you encounter while you talk. While you talk, I want you to, while you're making a talk to us, I want you to walk to the back of the room to the snack counter. And while you're making your talk, I'd like you to put together a snack for yourself and then take it and then eat it after it's made. and continue to walk around the room. I want you to have as much fun as possible while you're speaking.
Mm-hmm. And did it work for the people who attended your workshops?
Big time.
Did they manage to let go and be themselves?
Yes, to a large degree, they did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some people who were like this,
very tense. Mm-hmm.
But most people, I was able to create a fun environment where you didn't have to be perfect, where the norm was to do all these things, where the norm was not to be perfect. The norm was not to be fluent. The norm was not to be intelligent or engaging. The norm was to have as much fun for you as possible while you were speaking.
Yeah, but the problem sometimes with people is that they have been conditioned to believe that they have to be serious and they have to be perfect.
Well, tell me about it.
They've been just conditioned to believe like there's no way I can have fun. I have to be serious.
That's why I did what I did.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to be totally serious if you're walking around, if you're making a talk to the rest of the people in the room and you're doing things like lying on the floor, looking out the window. I would tell people, walk out the door here, continue to talk, but walk down the hall and then come in this door over here. All the while you're talking.
Okay, superb.
Just outrageous things that people would never think of doing on their own. And it would begin to give people a sense of what it's like to do what they want to do.
How do I teach people who started to let go and be themselves and to have fun? Because they come to me and I really struggle to get them to relax because they're just so serious and so tense.
It's the same all over. Well, one of the things that I'm going to suggest to you is something which you're going to have to think whether in fact you want to do it. I recommend that you do it. But it takes a little doing, and that is to stop using the word stutter.
Okay.
And instead start talking about the challenges of holding back, letting go, because that is what the real issue is. What happens is that when people look at stutter, they end up turning it into a thing. I call it thingifying it. They thingify it. They make it into a thing. And once it becomes a thing, like, oh, here it is, I have this thing, then it can become something to fear.
That's it. Yeah.
If you start using the words hold back, you can't do that with that.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely.
Holding back is something that you do.
Yeah.
And so I talk about the fact that you can't do something and hold back from doing it at the same time, because you get this do it, don't do it, do it, don't do it, do it, don't do it.
And can I ask you, John, where does it come from, this holding back, this desire to hold back? Where does it come from?
Good question. It can come from any number of places. For example, my mother, delightful lady, she was a kindergarten teacher in her early days before she married my father. Everybody loved Louise Harrison. But years later, when I visited her in Florida, we were driving along the street, and my mother was, I think, 92 at the time. She was very old. And she turns to me out of the blue, and she said, you know, when I was married to your father, I never had an orgasm. I mean, really. And after she said that, a little voice in my mind said, makes sense. My mother did not let go. She never did things that were outrageous.
Yeah.
She never, things had to be proper. Things had to look good. Things had to get other people's approval.
That's it. Yeah.
She never did things just because she friggin' felt like she wanted to do it.
That's it. Yeah.
She never did. And my father was a businessman, and he really didn't know how to relate to kids too much. So I couldn't get much from him. But I never felt like I could just be myself. And in my book, and also in one of the articles that I wrote, I talked about when I was in 7th grade. One weekend, we had friends who I lived in New York, they were in New Jersey, which is the adjoining state. And we went to visit them. And they had a daughter by the name of Barbara Lee. It was Barbara Lee Brenner. Her name was, the family was the Brenners. And so my parents decided it would be a lot more fun if they hung out with Barbara Lee's parents. And I hung out with Barbara Lee and her friends, which is what I did the whole weekend. These people never knew me from before. And from the very moment that I met them, I was a different person. I was expressive. I was funny. I was loud. I was pushy. I mean, all things I would never do. I was assertive. I was adventurous. I did all these things. And for that entire day that I spent with them, I never had problems with stuttering, not once. And then at the end of the day or the next day, I forget when we went back, I went back to my home in Long Island, which is a suburb of New York. And I slipped back into the old role.
Yeah.
I was not that outspoken. I was not that loud. I was totally controlled.
Mm-hmm.
I was totally cognizant on a moment by moment basis of how I was impacting, everybody else. When I was with these other kids who I didn't know, I didn't do any of that stuff. I just did what I freaking wanted to do. I just blah, and it was an entirely different life experience. I never forgot that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very hard for me then to go back and be this new version in my old familiar environment, because I had established my personality. I established my relationship. I established people's expectations of who I was. And I just didn't feel confident enough to show up differently.
And how old were you at the time when you were loud and adventurous with that family that you've mentioned?
About 12 or 13.
12 or 13 years old. And how did it feel to be loud and adventurous and not hold back? How did it feel?
Fun.
It just felt fun. Mm-hmm.
It was fun. I just enjoyed, because I'm a particular kind of personality. I like having fun. I wish I could get my voice back. I like interacting with people. I like, as we say, schmoozing with people.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a word you use at all? Schmoozing?
I'm not sure if they use it in Britain here.
Well, yeah, well, they use it in New York. To schmooze means to,
to chat,
means to talk,
mm-hmm.
means to talk, to interact, to talk informally, to have fun, means to, when you say, I went out with George and we schmoozed all afternoon, it means we talked. But I like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And by the automatic shutdown, goodbye chair, it's going to say goodbye. Goodbye chair. I'm trying to teach it to say I love you, but it won't do it. I don't know why.
And what actually contributed to your holding back, John? Like how did it all begin? What happened?
Good question. Part of it had to do with how my mother related to me.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was a really delightful woman. Everybody loved her.
Mm-hmm.
But she never got out of control.
Mm-hmm.
She was a real subtle controller.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, there was something about being outrageous that just didn't fit in my family.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wanted to be good. I was an approval junkie.
An approval junkie. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wanted approval all the time. And if my mother would say, "Oh, don't worry about me. Do what the hell you want. Have some fun." She never said stuff like that. It was always doing the right things, doing the things that look good,
Mm-hmm.
doing the things that other people would approve of. Making sure all the dishes were lined up and clean, and I mean, all that stuff.
Yeah, pretty controlling, I guess.
Yes. My mother was very controlling,
Mm-hmm.
but in a very subtle way. in a nice way. She was not an overbearing personality, but she was controlling, and she was controlling of herself as well.
Yeah.
She was a control personality. And did I tell you what she said? I went to visit her in Florida when she was 91. My wife had gone to China with a client, and I went to Florida to visit my mother. And I was driving along the street in the town she was living in, and we were pulling up to a traffic light, and my mother turns to me, and out of the blue, she said, "You know, you won't believe this. You know, I never had an orgasm with your father." She was 91. That's what she said to me. And after I got over my shock, the first thought in my mind was, makes sense to me.
Yeah.
My mother didn't let go. And because she didn't let go, I'm sure she communicated that in some way to me, because I was a smart kid. I was emotional. You know, I was expressive. But from early on, I had this feeling that I had to do things right.
And when did you begin to overcome, that fear of doing something wrong? And where did you begin to kind of make your first steps towards freedom of expression?
Yes.
And not holding back?
After I went to university, I graduated in when I was 22. And then I went into the Army for 6 months in the reserves, active service. And then I went to work for my father, who had an advertising agency and a catalog business. And I worked with him for about a year and a half. And then I ran away from home at the age of 24. Well, I wasn't living at home. I was living in New York City with some roommates, but I ran away from New York at the age of 24, and I went to San Francisco. And when I came to San Francisco was just at the beginning of the whole personal growth explosion. We're taking LSD, people were doing encounter groups, people were trying experiments in living, they were doing all kinds of things. And I got involved with, I didn't get involved heavily with that. You know, I got a job as an advertising writer, you know, for an ad agency, but I really was intrigued by all this. So I started to go to groups and encounter groups and weekend workshops and stuff like that. And I started to expose myself to a lot of emotional and feeling activities that were just then becoming very prevalent. And I did that. I did a lot of that. I took LSD a couple of times. I did all, I did weekend workshops that went all day for 2 days straight, where your emotions got really engaged and the feeling level in the room was very intense. I joined Toastmasters. I jumped out of airplanes a little bit.
Oh, wow.
I wanted to find out what personal experience was all about.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up knowing what personal experience was about. I grew up knowing what being a good boy and getting approval was all about. But I didn't grow up having personal experience. But when I went to California, away from my family, away from everybody who knew me, into a whole other world where people were in the 1950s and 60s, it was a big free for all in California.
Yeah.
Everybody was doing everything.
I can imagine.
And that's when I began to get in touch with who I was and what I felt.
That's it. Yeah.
And that was so central to everything.
So do you think, cheers, do you think recovery from stuttering, does it involve finding yourself, your authenticity? Is this the only way? Because people are searching for magic pills these days.
It's not the only way. It is part of a recovery program.
It's a part of the recovery. And what else is there? So if being authentic, it's a part of it, what else comes into play in order to recover?
Well, you have to get in touch with your emotions. Because this is an emotional problem. This is a problem of this.
Yeah.
Go this way, want to go that way. Two forces of equal strength pulling in opposite direction, you end up with a block. So if you want to get rid of the block, something has to give. One side or the other has to give. And that means that you have to start having experiences where, at least from a speaking point of view, you have to be able to be in groups where you stand up and be yourself.
Be yourself.
Be yourself. And that's why in my public speaking book, in my book on stuttering, I have a complete public speaking program of 10 exercises. And when I ran public speaking workshops in San Francisco for the general public, these were the 10 things that I would do. I mean, not all of them each time because, they took time, but these exercises are all designed to allow you to give yourself permission to be yourself, to be who you are, to feel what you want to feel, to do things that you normally wouldn't do. You take somebody you take somebody who's afraid to be self-assertive, and if you get them lying on the floor in front of the class, making a talk, and I tell them to double your volume and then double it again and then double it again, so they're talking in a big voice. You know, it's very hard to be, it's very hard to hold back under those circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean, you have to let go. And if you've never had the experience of letting go, that might be the first time that you ever have it. But you have to begin to know what it feels like to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people who stutter are all caught up in trying to do it properly. They're all caught up in trying to be right, but they're not at all caught up in trying to be themselves.
That's it. Yeah. We are out of touch with ourselves. That's why we have all sorts of emotional problems, not just stuttering.
That's the big one.
That's a big one. Yeah.
I mean, if you understand that, you're halfway to really understanding what this whole problem's about.
Yeah, I'm still learning, kind of working through my other problems as well. It's not just to do with holding back, it's other things in life as well, because I believe that holding back can spread over to other aspects of your life, not just your speaking.
Oh, sure.
So it's kind of like a multifaceted problem, I guess,
Oh, yeah.
for many
I mean, if
people.
you feel like you have to be perfect, for example, that's a big burden.
It
If
is a
you just want to
burden.
go out and live your life and have fun, you know, to feel like you always have to be perfect and do it right.
Okay.
That's why having fun is the antidote to performance fears, I tell people.
Yeah.
Because when you're having fun, you're being most yourself. And when you're being most yourself, that is when you are most in touch with your personal powers.
Yeah, but the biggest problem for many people, from my personal experience, is that people are actually afraid of they are afraid of being themselves. This is their biggest fear, to
I
find
know
out
it
who
is.
they are.
I know it is. And that's why if you're going to run a public speaking workshop, you have to create an environment where people will begin to trust that it's okay to drop their guard
Mm-hmm.
and to just follow their emotions and their impulses and do what they want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And, and, and that's not easy to do, you know, especially with people who have had rigid control over
Mm-hmm.
their self-image and don't want to reveal to other people
That's it.
or even to themselves what it is that they really would like to do and be and say.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how long did it take you to go from an out of control stutterer to a fluent speaker?
Well, I was never an out of control stutterer.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least what that conjures up. I
Mm-hmm.
was let's see how to describe it. In most cases, I didn't have major problems, but in the worst possible case, if I was talking to you, I might block like this. I wouldn't have any visible struggle. I just have a silent block.
Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty much the extent of it. Which in most cases wasn't too bad, but one of the most embarrassing moments, I grew up as a Reformed Jew, and when I was 13, I decided I wanted to get bar mitzvahed. And I remember that the rabbi, in order to do a bar mitzvah, required you to show up on the Friday night before, and among other things, you had to stand up at the end of the meeting, the service, and read the announcements to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
This group will meet here, and this will happen here, and I remember that. And so and I sat there through the whole service, oh my God, I got to do this. And finally I stood up, and it took me forever. I said things like, the men's club will meet on Thursday night at 7:30. I mean, that's how I did that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was so mortified when, after it was all over and I got through it, the rabbi, trying to be friendly and trying to put me at ease, said, what happened? Did the cat get your tongue? And it was he was just trying to be pleasant. And and if I could have killed him at that point, I would have.
Yeah, I can imagine what you felt.
Yeah. But that was the worst possible speaking situation I ever had. When I was bar mitzvahed at the age of 13, they gave me a paragraph about that long of transliterated Hebrew, which I had to stand up and recite. But because I had a chance to rehearse it and rehearse it and rehearse it and rehearse it and rehearse it, by the time I got to my bar mitzvah, I was able to say it without any problems.
Oh, wow.
So it was very situational, and it had to do with how comfortable I was with the material that I had to speak. That makes sense. Is all this making sense to you?
Yeah, all making sense. Thank you very much. So for people who will be watching this interview, how long on average do you think it takes to recover from stuttering, or at least achieve a significant level of fluency? Do you think is there any?
You can't say, because it depends on the individual. It depends on what they're doing. It depends on the effectiveness of whatever activities they're involved with. With me, because my speech wasn't all that bad, but I was doing a lot of this stuff. I was, but back in the 60s, into all kinds of personal growth activities. And I wanted to find out who I was, and I wanted to have experiences. And, I did, all night marathons and all kinds of, weird stuff like that. So it depends on the individual. You can't,
Okay.
you cannot say definitively
Mm-hmm.
how long something takes, because it depends on how much the person holds back,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of emotions they're holding back, what their previous experience has been, how supportive the people are around them,
Yeah.
how free they are to express themselves. It depends on a lot of factors.
Okay, I see. And how did you get into the topic of stuttering? Because before you have mentioned that you worked in an advertisement agency. So how did it all begin with, so like you researching stuttering and trying to
Well,
find a key?
I did that while I was an advertising copywriter.
Mm-hmm.
I made my living in advertising,
Mm-hmm.
not in stuttering.
And like, why did you start to actually explore the topic of holding back? Was it for your personal development, or
Yes,
did you want to, I don't
it
know,
was
find
for
a
my,
key and make it
I
available?
was trying to unpuzzle, I was trying to figure out what the problem was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not just my speech. I just held back in a lot of ways. I, I'll give you an example. It was not until I was in an encounter group at the age of 29 that I ever looked at another human being and got openly angry at them. 29. And the guy I got angry at was a guy I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually worked in Hollywood and was a part-time actor. So he was very good at expressing himself. And he was giving me a hard time.
Yeah.
I finally looked at him and I blew up. And he was thrilled with it. He finally got me to react.
Yeah. And how did it feel to get angry, to get pissed off
I loved it.
for the first time?
I loved it. I loved it because it was okay.
It was okay. Because some people say that after they get angry, they actually feel guilty. Have you had
That's
any sense of guilt?
no, that's because of the circumstances under which it happens. If the
Mm-hmm.
reason why you don't get angry is because you feel guilty, then when you get angry, you always feel guilty. But that was not the situation.
Okay.
This was an encounter group where the whole focus was on expressing your genuine feelings.
How would you define fluency?
Well, you can apply the word fluency to all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
You can apply it to drawing.
Yep. Mm-hmm. It's like
Fluency in
flow.
drawing. That's what it is. The word flow is involved in, is part of the word fluent, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm drawing a portrait of somebody, and I don't think I just allow my eye to direct my hand and I just draw what I see without thinking, that's fluency.
Mm-hmm. Without thinking,
Start,
without planning.
that's right. If I start to think and worry about it and evaluate it and all this other stuff, that's what gets in the way.
That's it. You lose your flow.
Yeah. Play music the same way,
Mm-hmm.
Fluency means you start the process and then you get out of your own way.
That's it. Yeah. Makes
And you
makes
allow
sense.
your inner brain, whatever it is that controls that, to take over. But you
Mhm.
have to be willing to trust that inner brain, which is not directly controllable. And that's the problem that we have with speech. Because very, very early on, we try and control something, which for most people is not something that is consciously controlled.
That's it. Absolutely true. And John, many people actually come to me and they are holding back and they're looking for some magic pill, for some list of exercises that will magically free them of their stuttering. And I tell them that, your problem is the problem of emotions and your attitudes. When you change your emotions, you will begin to naturally flow in speech. There is no need to use any techniques, any magic pills, any breathing techniques. So nothing at all. You will just naturally begin to flow. And they find it very hard to to believe this idea that things
Yeah.
can be that easy.
Where do you live?
I live in the UK, England.
Okay. Yeah. Well, in California, a lot of this was easier because, San Francisco was all loosey-goosey, and people came to California because they wanted to try different lifestyles and were willing to try any kind of ways of living that they felt like it. And
That's it.
so especially when I first came out here, there was very little, judgmental stuff, I just did things that I never would have done otherwise, like 48-hour non-sleep marathon experiences where at some point you got so tired that you really don't give a shit what you say or what you do or how you do it. You just,
Yeah.
So I began to get a sense of who I was when I was not censoring myself, when I was not showing up in a way that my mother would have liked me to show up, for example. What do I feel like doing right now? How do I feel like saying this? How do I feel like drawing this? How do I feel like expressing this? But I did a lot of self-expressive things. I took painting classes. I took acting classes. I got involved with many encounter group type things, all of which gave me an opportunity to explore and express what I was feeling or what I was really feeling. And basically,
there is no magic pill for stuttering, unfortunately.
There is no magic pills for holding back.
For holding back. Yeah, for holding back.
I'm going to stay on your case with that because I don't like the word stuttering.
Okay, there is no magic pill for holding back.
That's correct.
Yeah, but people are still hopeful that there might be because
well, I know.
They don't want to put in any work. They don't want to put in any work. They just say, give me the pill.
You're absolutely right.
And all my problems are gone. But I say, I have no such pill. You have to put in your work.
You're absolutely right, because in order to deal with the challenges of holding back and to stop doing that, you have to do something which is very difficult for people. You have to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, this is the hardest thing to do.
You got to get out of your comfort zone. You know, most people don't want to get out of their comfort zone.
No.
I mean, when
Even
I came
when,
out,
yeah, even when that comfort zone is not very comfortable,
that's right.
they
Because
still
they don't trust it.
they don't want to get out. Yeah.
And so what you have to do is to find organizations and activities such as Toastmasters, which help people to slowly get out of the comfort zone by giving them an opportunity to do things that they normally fear, but in which there are no consequences if they don't do it perfectly or correctly or what have you.
That's it. Okay, yeah, I mean, you have actually provided the answer to holding back in this interview, and for me it's pretty clear. But I'm just afraid that for people who will be watching this interview, that they might still resist the idea that all you need to do to recover from holding back, hello, is to begin to have fun speaking, right? Is to come out of the comfort zone.
Yeah, you need to find ways to have fun. And to have fun speaking, which means that you have to find activities and organizations which make such opportunities available.
Yeah.
That's why Toastmasters has always been very good for that. But there are other, I'm sure that there are other kinds of speaking groups, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the other problem is that people, when they hold back, they always focus on their speaking when it comes to recovery, which I believe is the wrong way to do it.
Well, that's right, because they're still focusing on performance.
Yeah, they always they are so obsessed with fluency, with their speech.
They're focused on performance.
Yep.
Rather than being focused on self-expressiveness.
That's it. Yay.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
If you're focused on saying, oh man, I want the experience of just cutting out and letting go. I don't care how it shows up. I just want to feel the freedom of just doing it the way I want to do it. But it's very hard to get people to say that, especially somebody who's been doing just the opposite.
Yeah, it's very difficult to overcome that barrier and to let your hair down.
So you have to do it in little bits. You know, that's why in Toastmasters, you know, you don't try and make a 3-hour speech at your first meeting.
That's it.
You know, you stand up and you if you can give your name and not pass out, you know, that's probably good. You know,
super, John. Yeah, superb. Well,
you have to slowly acclimatize yourself to the situation.
Yeah.
By doing it enough to find out that it's safe to do it some more.
Absolutely, John. Yeah. Well, I guess all my questions are over. Just one last point. because I work with people who stutter from different countries, and sometimes I really kind of become desperate because it's so hard to convince them that the problem of holding back is not a problem of speech. What would be your message to to that group of people who still stubbornly believe that holding back is to do with speaking? And this includes traditional speech therapy as well.
I know it does, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah, traditional speech therapy, they still believe it's the problem of speech, not holding back.
It's a real challenge. I don't have any easy answers. You need to see if you can find activities that give people a chance to interact with other people, such as encounter groups, or whatever they're called these days. I don't know. But where you can show up, for a few hours in the evening and share what's on your mind and share your feelings and be yourself without having to feel like you have to perform for other people.
Yeah.
And there's no shortcut around that, unfortunately. You just have to do it. I mean, I had to do it step by step.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, like for me, all the questions that I had about stuttering have been answered, and I have been following the same way as yourself, because people try to convince me that stuttering is a speech problem and there is nothing you can do. This is an incurable disease. That's what I've been told.
I know. There is so much misinformation.
Yeah.
About stuttering out there. I mean, it's rife with misinformation.
Absolutely. And then
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
How in the world did you get to write such perfect English?
Well, I have lived in England for 18 years.
I know, but your writing style is beautiful.
Oh, well, thanks very much. I didn't expect that, to be honest.
It's
well,
really
thanks
very, very good.
What do you think of my book?
I like it so far. I'm not reading it from the front to the back. I'm reading around in various areas.
Ah, okay, super.
So I've read various areas. I'm going to read the whole book, so and I can give you more of a feedback then.
Oh, thanks. Stuttering. I just want to stop stuttering. I say, well, stuttering is not what it is. Stuttering is not what it seems. It's a completely different problem.
The big problem is to get people to stop using the word stuttering, quite frankly. Because I say when you use stuttering, what you're doing is and I invented a word, I said you're thingifying a problem. Turning the problem into a thing.
Yeah.
But it's not a thing. Stuttering is not the most basic expression of the problem. The most basic expression of the problem is that you're holding back. And when you hold back and try and speak at the same time, then you have a block. And if you want to call that stuttering, well, you can go right ahead, but
Yeah, yeah. And what would you say to traditional speech therapy? Because they there is so much resistance to adopting these new ideas.
I know it's
just like an unbreakable wall.
There is a certain small number of people of them who are really with us. Have you checked the website of a therapist called Barbara Dahm, Dahm?
Yes, I have heard of her.
Check her website. I have a couple of my articles on her website too. I met Barbara Dahm in Munich in 1995 when I was there for an international conference. And we've been together ever since. She's a speech therapist, but she is really, really tuned in and very successful in what she does. But she really understands the problem in a way that a lot of therapists don't do that. Look at her website, and it may give you some ideas.
Yeah. I mean,
spelled D-A-H-M.
Yeah. I think I have seen a couple of her streams on Facebook. So she's good.
There's another. I'll send you the names and websites of a couple of therapists that I think are really good. You can see what they do.
Yeah, it would be nice, because I'm really struggling to explain to people what I know sometimes. I don't know, maybe it's because I don't have enough experience. I'm not too sure, but it's really hard sometimes. People are so conditioned to believe that this is all about holding back. This is all about speech. I say, no, that's not about speech, but they just say, no, all I want is to gain fluency. I don't want you to hold back anymore. I want you to be fluent. That's all I want. Just give me this.
They're just looking at the superficial manifestations.
That's it.
Of the problem.
And how can I convince them?
Well, you need to give them some stuff to read. So give them some of my stuff.
Yeah. They just so stubborn. Okay.
I have one article called "How I Recovered from Chronic Stuttering."
I think I've read it. Was it part of your conference speech?
I don't think so, but it's a fairly recent article, I think. I can't remember, but if you could start feeding them, more information like this, in which stuttering is talked about as a total system,